Hey, as usual, we're gonna start from the front lines, and we have the good news from Luhansk Oblast. Not long time ago, Ukraine was successful in Nadia village. Well, Ukraine started a few more counterattacks in this area. I would say the tactics of the Ukrainian army is very similar to the Russian one, like Ukraine attacks in multiple of the directions, sometimes having limited success. Well, Russia has its own profitable hotspots where they take the ground still, but the idea is the same, to exhaust the counterpart using small bites. And Ukraine, I would say, is even more effective in these tactics. So here Ukraine liberated Nadia village and started a few more counterattacks in this place. Yeah, it's just this 3D map for the reference, but we don't have the latest update over here depicted. We have to wait like a couple of days. They're very late with their updates. But you know what? We have the confirmation from the Pokros direction that the Ukrainian army is very successful there, not far away from Shevchenko. Yeah, I think I'm gonna move my picture a little for you to see everything. So before Ukraine stroked Russian army in several of the places, over here it was the attack vector towards Peshana, then there was the strike from this side, and Shevchenko is mainly in the gray area. I don't know why they depict it in red, but it's in a gray area. No one knows who really controls this village. There is the presence of the Russian army as well as the Ukrainian army, and not long time ago, like a couple of days ago, Ukraine started one more offensive. The idea is just to cut the Russian army from supplies. There are two of the filled roads in this place. And also there is the lake which plays a strategic role, so you may definitely trap the Russian army here. So about Pokrovsk, Ukraine keeps initiative, attacking from multiple of the areas. As you see, the fights in Pokrovsk have intensified for the last few days, so Ukraine is successful here in the northern part, trying to cut this Russian hump near Peshchane. But at the same time, Russia sent a significant amount of their reinforcements in their new attack attempts in this southwest area. The Russian tank was even spotted and kaputted not far away from Kotlarivka, very close to Ukrainian main defense line. And we may check out the information about it. A Ukrainian shadow unit is working there with the drones, and definitely we have the confirmation about the Russian losses. And Russians also entered Bogdanovka village, but the same stuff with the losses. Russia lost at least two of the tanks in this direction, and there were also multiple of the assaults a little behind the main front line. Ukraine hit all of that stuff mostly with FPV drones. And the tactics for Russia, well, they move forward, they land their infantry, and then they operate from the new bridgehead positions, which are still quite vulnerable because they're under Ukrainian drone strikes. But nevertheless, they try to move using these tactics, and for the recent time they sent more reinforcements, especially to this direction. It is also interesting that Ukraine started to use more of the aviation gliding bombs to hit Russian facilities, supply hubs, and headquarters further away from the front lines. For example, let's check this out. We have a geolocation and confirmation of the strike, so Russia tries to make some sort of the base there, but unsuccessfully, as you may see. The drone surveillance and intelligence plays the great role because Ukraine spots the Russian positions with Russian soldiers, and later on aviation, artillery, HIMARS or FPV drones do the rest of the job. But relative to aviation, I definitely see the spike in activity from Ukrainian side, from Ukrainian Air Force. What is happening in Zaporizhia? The situation is standstill for the Russian army out there. They were successful like 1 week ago, but since that time they're not moving forward. About the tourist town, you may see how many drones the Ukrainian army is using there, trying to push Russians away from the settlement, but Russians send more and more army men, so it's the total mess happening in Toretsk right now. It is really hard to say who keeps initiative in the settlement itself. Yeah, around it, like for example here, Ukraine was really successful, but here, yes, Ukrainian infantry went inside in the central part, but since like 1 or maybe 2 weeks already, Ukrainian army is not moving forward in the settlement itself. And the Russian army continue to do the same stuff what they do usually in Ukraine. What is their scanner printer, which they took from this house, which was destroyed by Russians. Just look how happy they are. It's their main motivation to go to Ukraine. This screenshot is from the Ukrainian drone camera, and this is a real cheer, will freaking cheer on the front lines. I have the bigger video, I shared it on my Telegram channel. Yeah, definitely Russians are using wheelchairs on the front lines. It is absolutely crazy. Maybe for evacuation of their military personnel, but we also understand that Russia is sending their disabled soldiers to attack too. And this is one of the Russian convoy attacks which were repelled by the 72nd Separate Brigade. Here Russians moved with 3 of the tanks, they saw the resistance and decided to retreat from the battlefield. However, they landed the infantry, which later on was captured. But you know what, it seems like they have the order from their command to return back to battle, and they were captured with all of their vehicles. So there were 2 of the unsuccessful strikes by Russia, which led to the total disaster for them. And yes, absolutely great job by the 72nd Ukrainian Separate Brigade. My friends, by the way, if you want to support the job that I do here almost daily, you are very welcome to my Patreon. I'll put the link for my Patreon page right in the video description below. Thank you so much for supporting my motivation. And now let's move to the other important news. There was the interesting broadcast here. Let's listen.
Though President Trump called me to tell me he is, quote, pissed off with Russia's President Putin and threatened to impose secondary tariffs on Russia's oil. Quote, if Russia and I are unable to make a deal on stopping the bloodshed in Ukraine, and if I think it was Russia's fault, which it might not be, but if I think it was Russia's fault, I am going to put secondary tariffs on all oil coming out of Russia. Mr. Trump said 25% tariffs on Russian oil could happen any moment and told me he plans to speak with President Putin this week. The president told me, quote, I was very angry, pissed off when Putin started getting into Zelensky's credibility and started talking about new leadership in Ukraine.
I think that Donald Trump himself told the same stuff about Zelensky, saying that he has just 4% of the approval rating, which is absolute bullshit as we understand, and Donald Trump is pissed off as he says, but he wants to meet with Putin again on the phone conversation. And guys, sadly, but Donald Trump has no lever to act on Russia. Sanctions? Do you think that Russia really afraid of that? They already under sanctions for quite extended period of time and they are not collapsing. It requires years to collapse. Plus 25% tariffs on the Russian oil will not resolve that if they are applied just from the United States of America. Still, there are some of the countries like India and China which buy the Russian oil. Yeah, Russia has to sell it for the cheaper price, but nevertheless they have their income. I would say that in general the drop of the oil prices may influence the market and situation for Russia, but those 25% tariffs, I don't think so. I think that Trump is just playing with his words. Maybe he might even apply some of the sanctions on Russia, but they will not resolve anything. Unfortunately, guys, so the only solution is to support Ukraine more. And you know what? Russia found a way how to get money to support their military production, even under the sanctions. Basically, Russia will steal money from their people. So not long time ago, the Russian central bank says that it is not planning to freeze citizens' deposits. However, such reassurances only deepen public anxiety in Russia. And yes, Russia always lies because Nabiullina, the head of the Russian central bank, already stated that we most likely have to resort the unpopular step of temporary freezing of household deposits starting from March of this year. No, Russians, we're not taking your money. No, we're gonna freeze them, okay? You will not be able to have the access to your deposits. They will work as we think they will be. And yes, you may think that you will still have those funds in the bank and so on, but in fact, de facto, banks will just invest those funds in the Russian military corporations, and that's what might keep the Russian economy, military economy especially, running. So instead of word confiscation, they just use the word freezing. Yeah, it's just, you know, the game of the words, like they call the war the special military operation and so on. Well, actually those are good and bad news at the same time. The good news that definitely there is the crisis in the Russian economy. In the long run, they understand that they cannot maintain the military production at the same level, so they need urgently to find some of the funds. The bad thing, especially for us, that it seems like they found the source to get cheap or even free money, and we're speaking about hundreds of billions of dollars, because Russians have at least 57 trillion rubles deposits in their banks, so yeah, it's quite a lot. And if Russia freezes or confiscates all of that for their military, they may continue the war for years, despite the sanctions and so-called pressure from Donald Trump, because Russia still trades with multiple of the countries, which are quite okay with Russians' policy. And if you think that even that situation might spark some of the riots in Russia, no. The Russian society, it's very volatile, it's stable, it's under control, the repressions play their role. People already understood what might happen if you start to go against the government. The destiny of Navalny or even Prigozhin showed the outcome. So I do not believe that the current Russian society in their state is really anti-government. I wouldn't say that. And yes, there are many people who are in opposition to the Russian regime, but imagine living under this pressure from propaganda and pressure from the other people who support the Russian regime. But still, I think that the Russian regime will be disassembled not by people, maybe, but by the Russian elite. So Russia is getting closer to the point of its economical collapse. It might happen in the coming years, and people like Ramzan Kadyrov understand that. The important story source uncovered some of the information about the conflict between Putin and Kadyrov, which erupted after Kremlin found out that Kadyrov is looking for alternate airfield for his finances and for security of his family and himself. Basically, Kadyrov negotiates all of that with some of the monarchies of the Middle Eastern countries, Muslim countries. I know whether it's Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE or Oman, who knows, but definitely Kadyrov has his own personal connections, and Putin, so Kremlin, doesn't like that stuff. First of all, that Kadyrov negotiates behind the back of Kremlin, jumping over the head of Putin. So maybe Kadyrov knows something after all, and why he needs security for his family, like family safety. Well, maybe it all started from this Wildberry scandal before then Kadyrov went to direct confrontation against some of the businessmen connected to the Kremlin's regime. Or maybe Kadyrov is looking for something new. He wants to expand his power in Northern Caucasus, and for that he needs to reinsure the security of his family. Well, we're gonna see it in the nearby future, but what we know that the Russian elite, it is not solid. It shows that it is out there supporting Putin, but in fact they're looking for more power. And if something goes wrong with Putin, like for example he's no more, well, they will blame Putin for everything. For the war, for economic crisis. It would be a huge downfall of the historical reputation of Putin, as it was with Stalin, by the way. And there is the variant that there could be even some of the clashes inside Russia, because those small leaders of the local regions like Kadyrov will try to fight for the power. Yeah, I think it could be really a live scenario for Russia, but again, it will not happen today or tomorrow. Have to wait for some years. And the Wall Street Journal says that peace may hurt the Russian economy even more than the war itself, because Russia oriented its economy on military production. The Russian corporations take loans from banks. Russia pays huge salaries for their workers who employed in those facilities, as well as for the Russian volunteers, and those money, they go back partially at least in the Russian economy. Yet the money which Russia spends for producing tanks and vehicles which are being kaputted in Ukraine are just wasted, but at least some part, like salaries, it's going back to economy. People are buying more goods in the grocery stores and so on. And if the war stops, all of that will not bring any sort of the profit to Russian economy at all. Plus hundreds of thousands of the Russian soldiers who are busy in Ukraine will go back to Russia. They will be out of use and in a way rejected by the Russian society. In its turn, it is very risky for the Russian regime because it might spark some of the unrest, and for sure the criminal activity will also rise. So why would Putin stop this war? It's not profitable for him any longer. He just plays with Trump's ambitions for a temporary ceasefire. Yeah, temporary, because for Donald Trump, he needs just that, ceasefire, to put it in his achievement, like, I did it myself. What happens after me, I don't care. So yeah, I agree totally with this article that for Russia's economy, the end of the war could be even worse than continuation of the war. Guys, remember not long time ago we were speaking about the Kerch Bridge? Well, actually in 2024 there was one more strike of Ukrainian army coordinated with the United States of America on that facility. Back then, Ukraine used some of the drone boats and ATACMS missiles. However, as the New York Times says, relative to their sources in Washington, that the bridge itself sustained just minor damages and was quickly repaired. And that basically confirms my idea that Ukraine is in lack of the tools to do something really extraordinary with the bridge, because it's very robust construction. Plus, nowadays, very defended from the sea, from the sky, so yeah, it's very hard to cancel it. But after all, it's not impossible. Ukraine just needs to obtain good tools for it. I guess, as I say to you, be ready for the Orange King to run for his third term. Donald Trump won't rule out seeking third term in the White House, tells NBC News. There are methods for doing so. While some say that other candidate may win the election campaign for Donald Trump, for example, J.D. Vance. Yes, we understand that he's not that popular nowadays to win, but we are speaking about the legal chance for it. So if candidate wins, and if candidate, for example, takes Donald Trump as the vice president, and after elections candidate resigns, so vice president becomes a president, something like that. That's what I understood from reading this kind of the article. So potentially there are definitely the variants for Donald Trump to be elected once again. The other thing that this guy is already kind of elderly. 78 years old, by the time of the elections he'll be 82. And the president job is kind of stressful. After all, well, Donald Trump plays golf, so he tries to be at least physically active. But 82 years and going for president, personally, I wouldn't do so, but at the same time, I understand that power is the biggest drug out there. It's bigger than everything. And that's why definitely he might go for his third term because of that, because of this huge addiction. And he might stay there until he's no more. Tell me, guys, what do you think? May this guy run for his third term? And again, we have a fresh statement from Donald Trump about Greenland. He says that he won't rule out military force to take in Greenland to occupy the island. So all of the options on the table out there, and I personally think that in a coming nearby future, like in the coming months, there is the high possibility for the United States of America force to be used against Greenland, so against Denmark actually. So Trump says that we'll get Greenland, yeah, 100%, so we'll occupy Greenland, which is, as for me, is absolute craziness. Trump didn't say anything about Greenland during his election campaign, and now he wants to conquer the world. What can I say? A second Putin is out there, and potentially even more dangerous because he's in charge of the United States of America. Unlike Russia, the United States is a huge economy and military superpower. So what Trump might do really with our world is scary. Alright, it seems like China designed the solution for the Russian soldiers against the FPV drone strikes and the drone drops. Basically, they propose to use the square construction with the frame and some sort of the mesh. Look how it operates against the drones. So drone goes and it is just stack. Awesome. And if there is the drone drop, you just jump and push grenade away. Wow. I'm not even saying that if you bounce grenade nearby, you cannot even lay down to minimize the impact of grenade on your body, but moving in this thing is absolutely crazy. What do you think? Should the Russian army get those square-shaped meshes for their soldiers? Well, maybe they can use even this kind of modification. Yeah, the guys in the comments of my Telegram group, they're really hilarious.
On Iran, the president said he's also considering secondary tariffs if Iran doesn't agree to a nuclear deal. Quote, if they don't make a deal, there will be bombing. And it will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before.
Kind of the strong statement as for the most peaceful president, as Donald Trump calls himself. Well, Iran already stated that they will not speak with Donald Trump or United States officials about some sort of the new nuclear deal. So will Donald Trump be bombing Iran in that case, or those are just screaming words with caps lock? We'll see. I don't think that the United States will do it for now. Maybe Israel might do it, by the way, under support of the United States. The Economist says that Zelensky is planning for elections this summer. Well, I don't think that they will happen, but if they will happen, I will go and vote for Zelensky. Because, I see that Putin is clearly against Zelensky. And Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, and Donald Trump, I guess too, it definitely shows that Zelensky is doing a right thing if those pricks are against him. And yes, he has the highest chance actually to be elected. You may say Zaluzhny, well, Zaluzhny, he is general, and he is in lack of that charisma compared to Zelensky. Also, Zelensky speaks much better compared to Zaluzhny, so Zaluzhny, he might take part in those elections, but I think he will lose those. But I guess we're speaking about some assumptions that elections might happen in Ukraine this year. Honestly, I think that elections are not good for Ukraine at all. Then the war is out there, those should not be conducted, they divide the society. Alright my friends, and now please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so you help me a lot, and as usual I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.